Hi, everyone, and welcome to the last episode of season 2 on Spotlight with Scientists in School. And what a way to end it. I'm so excited that today I'm joined by Michele Romanow. She is co-founder and president of Clearco. She's a serial entrepreneur who had funded 6 companies by the age of 35. She says now is the best time to be a woman in technology, and she's also the youngest dragon on Dragon's Den. I'm so excited for this interview. Let's head on over and meet Michele. Welcome to Spotlight with Scientists in School. I'm so excited today that I have Michele Romanow with me. Thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, great to be here.
This is amazing. You're a serial entrepreneur, and I've read that people who go into this type of business as kids tend to be really curious and risk takers. Would you describe
Yeah.
yourself as that as a kid?
I was very curious, and I think it's incredibly important to foster the curiosity in children, no matter how annoying that might be at moments. The reality is our world was built on, largely a series of historical events, and so, still to this day, if someone tells me they're in an industry that I know nothing about, I don't know, I'm in the garbage industry. I'm actually curious on how that works and why we do the things that we do. And those questions become the source of massive innovation because so often, I mean, I look at what we did with Clearco. It was like there was no good reason that every financial institution in the world was not funding e-commerce founders. But they didn't understand it. These businesses didn't have assets. But it was only after asking that question so many times that we could get there. And so fostering the curiosity in kids, I think, is tremendously important. And then I would say risk taking is especially important. And I think, boys probably have a natural tendency to have stronger risk-taking abilities, and encouraging our girls to take risks is incredibly important. Um, we teach boys a lot to jump off the monkey bars and see what would
Right.
happen. And I think girls start learning and start having this desire to be perfect. And in innovation, if you want to create things, perfection is the enemy. You have to be
Yes.
moving and you have to be going very quickly and you have to be trying things. And so I just think that's incredibly important.
I have 3 girls, and they're going to love your answer. They're going to love to hear that. Now, you grew up on a farm.
I grew up in Regina, Saskatchewan. There was a family farm, but I grew up in kindergarten to grade 6 in Regina.
Okay, so what brought you to Ontario and specifically to Queen's University?
So I did high school and junior high in Calgary. And then, my parents told me I could study anything as long as it was engineering. So I always joked I had an abundance of choice. And as much as I joke about that, I was incredibly happy that they encouraged me to
Yeah.
do that. I think a STEM career like helped me enormously get started in the early days. Incredible confidence and fluidity with numbers that ended up making me a much stronger business person. And I did a bunch of research. I called a bunch of people that had gone to different universities. And I actually remember the people that I talked to that went to Queens, when you asked them about Queens, their eyes just
Mm,
lit up. And it was like they transported back 20 years and they just talked about how amazing that community was.
right.
And I made that decision based on community. And I think it was a really strong one. And it's important that you don't need to take the path of least resistance when you go. I mean, when I graduated, no one was becoming an entrepreneur. That was
Right.
not the career path that people were taking. But we decided to do something totally different.
Your experience at Queens, I went to Queens too, so I know what you mean about the community. I
Amazing.
absolutely loved it. I did teachers college there, but you
Yeah.
did something very unique in starting a business. I've read that you met 2 very special people that kind of set you
Yeah.
on a path, right? And you started the tea room. Tell me about that. How did that come about?
Yeah. So I'd figured out by second year that I was going to be much better at building businesses as
Mhm.
opposed to building bridges. And so I wanted to start building something. There was a new engineering building called the Integrated Learning Center, and they had a room for a food service space. And I wanted to see, given that my parents had come from the oil and gas industry, the first thing I
Mhm.
was at 21 was a bleeding heart environmentalist. And so I wanted to see if you could totally build a sustainable business. And so my idea was take something simple and high margin like coffee and see if you could take all of the waste out of it and make it sustainable. And so I ended up pitching this to the university and they said no at first. And it took us 2 years to do it. And it finally opened in my 4th year and it's been open for the last like 13 or 14 years now, which
Right.
is
It's
pretty
still there.
amazing.
Yeah.
And it was after, I mean, that's when I caught the bug. That's when I understood
Mm.
how fun this could be, and that I really I would love to create businesses for the rest of my life. And it was after that that I then met Ryan and Anatoly, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, you built this cool thing. We should start working on an idea that we can build outside of school." And that's when we started spending our time, brainstorming what's the next $1 million idea. And we went through hundreds of different ideas until settling on pursuing caviar and fish farming. To do this, we had to say no to our job offers
Mm.
and actually move to the East Coast and start to build a
Mhm.
fishery from scratch. And I think it was incredibly important that I met my business partners in those early days, because in many ways, I don't think I was a high risk kid at all. Like, I don't think I was taking nearly enough risks. I was,
Mm.
very focused on being a good student and doing well at school. And many of that actually came at my expense, because when I became an entrepreneur, I had to learn that title pages and spelling didn't really matter that much. It was actually about, you know, getting things out, but getting them
Right.
out 3 times faster than the
Mm.
competition. And so I think when we teach kids, it's really important to be teaching them about speed and not just perfection. The
Right.
academic
Right.
system is based on perfection. It's based on the idea that 90% is better than 80%. But when you want to build something, it means you have to try a lot of things,
Right.
and it means you have to move a lot faster than people. And so
Mm.
stressing that, I think, is really important as well. And I credit my early business partner Anatoly for teaching me a lot about taking risks and how
Mhm.
far we would need to go. And we still talk a lot about the risks we continue to need to take as our companies get bigger.
Michelle, what the other interesting point that you made, and my second daughter at university will enjoy listening to, you started off in engineering, but ended up somewhere else, and that's okay. Like,
Oh
sometimes
yeah, of course.
right? Some people think that you can't switch midstream while you're in university, but you certainly can. You kind of find your way and do something else sometimes.
Oh,
Yeah.
and I finished my engineering degree, right?
Mm.
I finished my engineering. I did an MBA right after. But you don't have to be like, I didn't get my PN. So, like, that was, I didn't want to spend the 4 years of my life doing that. Like, that was not a
Right.
good use of my time. And so you can get an education. I actually think those are the strongest, right? It's the lawyers who don't necessarily become lawyers. Like, there's no rules on what you have to do with your education.
So what do you think, what kind of mindset do you need to be successful?
Um, you need to be relentless.
Relentless.
You need to be relentless. You need to be building an incredible amount of resilience, and you need to
Mm.
find your why on
Mm.
why what you're doing is incredibly important. And then, it's like I'm a dog with a bone when I want to get something done. And that requires a lot of innovation. That requires
Yeah.
hearing a lot of no's. That requires knocking on a lot of doors. I
Right.
mean, I don't know. There was like 200 people that said no to us as we were fundraising for
Hmm.
Clearbank, like,
Hmm.
or Clearco. Um, and that's part of the journey. I think that is this, and that is the successful mindset of athletes. It's a successful mindset of scientists. Um, it is just relentless in your pursuit to build your mission.
And everybody always talks about their successes, but have there been
Yeah.
failures along the way? And did you learn anything if you had any failures?
Oh my goodness. I mean, my
Yeah.
career is 80% failures. I don't like,
Mm.
failure is a
Mm.
complete byproduct
Exactly. Yeah.
of success. It does not. Um, Success doesn't exist without that, and that's why you need to be building yourself a really strong circle of people around you. You got to be building yourself around people that have failed a lot and succeeded a lot too, because they can remind you that almost every incredible innovation did not start with
Right.
knowing that this is going to work. um, I mean, like, the caviar business didn't work out because of the recession. We tried a bunch of other things that didn't work there. I mean, there was countless days in the early Bitopia days that I was certain we were going to go bankrupt and I was not going to make it another single day. It was really intense.
Now, I've heard you also say that this is the best time to be a woman in technology. Why?
Mhm.
Why would you
Oh
say
my
that?
gosh, because um, there's never been this much support and enthusiasm, and people looking to support this community, right? I think, I mean, even if you just look rationally, like, I look at my own grandmother, right? I mean, she grew up and, she probably has, she has very similar genes to me, and her career choices in life were, secretary or nurse or school teacher. And the opportunities I had were completely different. I mean, people
Right.
were looking on ways to support female founders. They were looking for ways to build. And so I think it's certainly the best time in all of history. And history is a very long period of time for women to be building. Um, and then I think now, given where we are, coming out of COVID, I think it's also never been a more exciting time,
Mhm.
because the market is looking for things that are very different than it was a year ago.
Tell me a little bit about Dragon's Den. You're the youngest dragon on Dragon's Den. What is that experience like? What's it like being on that show?
Oh, it's amazing. I mean, I see the, I mean, I was the pitcher,
Mm,
and I still am the pitcher. And so I have an enormous amount of empathy for what it takes to build a business, to try and get investors. And I've had some incredible founders that I've backed along the way. I mean, the founders of ND, the founders of RVZ, the founders of True Local, all have been incredible Canadian outcomes, and I found them all on the show. Moreover, I mean, I got almost all of the early inspiration from Clearco behind the show. I mean, I was seeing
mhm.
founders that were coming on the show, giving away 10, 20% of their company forever. And I would always ask them what they needed the capital for. And they usually always said the same two things. It was like, I need it for inventory and for ad spend. And I remember thinking, why are founders using the most expensive capital in the world to do something that's really repeatable and scalable? And that was the whole idea behind Clearco. We just changed our name, sorry.
Right.
So, we tell founders that we can give them that same capital they're looking for. And instead of taking, 10% of their business that will own forever, we're taking 10% of their revenue until we get our capital back plus 6%. And so that's become a revolutionary idea. We became one of the very few Canadian unicorns. We have invested now more than $2
Mhm.
billion into um, more than 5,000 different companies. And we operate in many countries around the world.
And what makes a good pitch? Because I'm sure you've heard it all on the show. When someone comes up and makes a pitch, like what are you looking for?
Yeah, I'm looking for three things. I'm looking for, the founder to really tell me why they're the unique person to build this
Mhm.
business. There's very few things that are proprietary about businesses, and understanding why you're the only one that can make this happen. And so connecting it to your own personal story, your why, and why you're going to be differentiated in the market is probably the most important thing. At the
Mhm.
end of the day, at the seed stage equity investment, we back founders. There's still, that business is going to pivot so many times. um, the second thing that I really look for is win-win business models. I find that when you're just arbitraging one product to another price point, those are often ground down as business models. But I look at something, like RVZ, that was the Airbnb for RVs. It had so much benefits for both sides. I mean, there was 2 million RVs that were used on average for 2 weeks a year. And
Right.
there was all these people looking for RVs. And so you create this win-win situation, and you own that marketplace, and you can be very, very powerful. And then the third thing that I look for is businesses with a tremendous amount of scale, where you can take a single product, you can find one market where things really work, but then you can continue to grow as that gets bigger and bigger.
Michelle, what are you passionate about? What gets you up in the morning?
Um, Helping founders. I think that founders are the best problem solvers we have in society. And I consider founders anyone that's really building, whether those are scientists or they're the entrepreneurs
Right.
um, themselves. And they're a shot of solving the world's hardest problems. I mean, I look at the trillions now of dollars that governments have invested into climate change, and the things that have made a meaningful difference so far were entrepreneurs. I mean, it was the
Right.
entrepreneurs that built cars and trucks we wanted to drive. It was the Nest thermostat in the US. Um, and so they really build the world that we want to
Right.
live in. And so I think about how capital has been such a huge blocker
Mhm.
in having that grow, and having different groups that were underfunded not being able to grow. And so, yeah, that's kind of
Yeah.
what my mission is at this point.
And let's say COVID's over. I'm talking masks off. We don't have to worry about anything. What's the first thing you would do?
Oh my God, go hug everyone that I've missed so
I know.
much.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I would say the same thing. I haven't hugged my mom and dad in over a year. It's time.
It's
um,
totally time for
yeah,
sure.
totally time. Thank you, Michelle, so much for taking the time. So inspirational, such great advice.
Thank
I
you.
wish you continued success. Thank you.
Oh, I appreciate it. So lovely to meet you.
Thanks.